Hello, everybody. It's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today, I have the pleasure to be joined by Leo Birenberg and Zach Robinson. On this episode, we will discuss in detail their fantastic music for Cobra Kai, the hit series based on the Karate Kid franchise. It is my pleasure to welcome Leo Birenberg and Zach Robinson.
Hello. Hi, listeners. Hi,
Hello.
Michael.
It's great to have you on my show. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to join me.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. And at first, I would like to talk just a little bit about the musical and cinematic legacy of The Karate Kid. Music by Bill Conti, and the films were directed by John G. Avildsen. Do you have a favorite film of the franchise or a favorite score which inspired you for Cobra Kai?
I like number one. I think the one thing about like the Karate Kid, it's like it's one of those movies that's just like ever present, omnipresent in like I don't know, youth social life and media consumption. Like Zach and I both are more of 90s kids. Like we were born in the 80s, but our defining years were in the 90s. And like Karate Kid, the first one, was just one of those movies that was always on TV. Like at any given moment, if you were like at a friend's house playing in the basement and you turn on the TV, like Karate Kid was probably on some channel. So like I feel like I've seen that movie a million times and never, I mean, I have sat down and watched it all the way through, but usually it's just like, oh, it's on TV. Let's just like start watching from whichever scene it happens to be at. The first one, I think, feels kind of like special and frozen in time for me.
I've
Great.
grown to like the other two only because they like progressively get crazier. Like Karate Kid 1 is pretty grounded, and I really appreciate kind of like how Cobra Kai is, how like once you're past the first one, it's kind of no holds bars and like everything, like you're fighting to the death by,
Right.
90 minutes later. Like you're fighting to the death. So I appreciate that in the second and also kind of the third one.
Great. The first one was actually pretty grounded. You're right. And then I just rewatched part three a couple of weeks ago, and then part four, and the third one, I would say, of course, the first one is still the best one, and then the second one in Okinawa. But the third part is kind of crazy. Also, the the introduction of Thomas Ian Griffith, who,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he was a bit of a nut. So
He's a mad lad.
absolutely true. And of course, the music also speaks for itself. In the Karate Kid, Bill Conti wrote fantastic scores, and the songs were also pretty cool. And now I would like to talk about your early discussions with the creators of Cobra Kai, Josh Heald, John Hurwitz, and also Hayden Schlossberg. What were they looking for, and what did you pitch them in order to find a common ground?
So we had actually found out about Cobra Kai through just reading the like Hollywood trades, and we saw that there was a YouTube show in development. Leo and I had done a YouTube show a couple years prior to Cobra Kai, so we were like, oh, we have a relationship with YouTube. Maybe we should just like try to go for the show. And we didn't know anything about it, but we had our agent reach out to the producers, and we put together a reel that kind of was like, okay, if we don't know anything about what this new Karate Kid show is going to be, let's just put the music that we think it should be. So we put like, some definitely some orchestral stuff. We put some kind of Asian influenced orchestral stuff. We put a lot of kind of like 80s
A lot
stuff,
of 80s.
like a lot of 80s stuff, because we just felt that that's what it should be, not knowing anything. We knew no information about this. And then we ended up getting a meeting with John, Josh, and Hayden. And when they sent us the script, it became clear. Then we were like, oh my God, they're bringing back Billy Zabka, they're bringing back Ralph Macchio, and this is like a completely different story than what we ever could have imagined. And it turns out that kind of our just initial gut reaction to the story with this kind of 80s tinge sound was the way that the showrunners wanted to go. They said that, at least in the beginning, this is Johnny's story, and we're kind of veering off in a different direction than what the Karate Kid was, and we wanted to have its own identity, but at the same time, like, you know, pay homage to the kind of Bill Conti verse of it all, and you know, we wanted to make it thematic, we wanted to make it epic and like feel like a cinematic universe in itself.
Was there a specific character and or a scene which stood out the most for you in those 3 seasons of Cobra Kai, and if so, which ones?
Oh man, that's a toughie, but I feel like it might all come down to, Zach, is it season 1 episode 7 or 8 with Johnny's story?
Yeah, it's 8.
It's 8. Episode 8, season 1 is kind of this, like, I don't know, in a lot of ways it's like the defining sequence of the show, when Johnny sits Miguel down and tells him like the story of Karate Kid 1 from his point of view. And you know, it's like, that's the essential, like, I don't know, it's the essence of the show. And also I think a pretty backbone music moment for us. The one thing that like was really important in approaching the score, like when we were trying to figure out what, after those discussions with John, Josh, and Hayden about the sound, like you mentioned like the pop songs, you know, a few minutes back, and a huge like important thing in putting it together was kind of making the palette for the score combine that palette from the original movie of kind of the Conti stuff and the pop stuff. Because we actually think, like, for your casual watcher, that combination is what people think of with the music. And so we wanted the score to really have that feel also.
Zach, Leo, as I understand, you two have different musical backgrounds. And how did you harness your skills, strengths, and also abilities to work on Cobra Kai?
I guess we come from, we have different backgrounds, but we kind of worked under the same dojo, so to speak, which was, we worked with Christoph Beck for a long time, and we learned a lot of the same type of like film scoring techniques and the same kind of systems, even down to like our logistical computer systems, like in our mock-up systems and all that stuff. So we actually are very fluid together in that sense. But Cobra Kai is a very unique project for both of us, because like we both are proficient in a lot of different types of music. You have to be when you're composers. But yes, our backgrounds, like how I kind of got into music was through like rock and roll and guitar, and through like playing in bands growing up, and then eventually studying composition in college. And Leo can speak to where he came up, but we ended up, Leo, you tell where you came from, and talk about how we blended in the show.
Oh, totally. So I grew up as like a saxophone player and clarinet player, and studied voice and did a lot of musical theater. I was, you know, big jazz nerd in high school, and was getting into orchestra music at first, like through film scores, but then I also went to go study composition in college, and then just kind of wanted to nerd out about like Mozart through Wagner for 4 years. But like Zach and I, like we both, as he said, like we have a lot of overlap in our musical interests. Like we both like to say we each quote unquote get it, with like in terms of being able to just hand ideas off to each other and like understand within those different styles, like exactly what the other's going for. But with Cobra Kai in particular, like all of these influences really like rise to the top in their most undistilled, like pure form. Because I mean, Zach, like a guy who loves the 80s, loves 80s guitar play, amazing guitar player. Zach has this like synth project, or, you know, that's a narrow way of describing it, but this like 80s retro music project called DAD, that is big in the synth wave scene. And, you know, I play a lot of like Japanese flute instruments and love, like we both, I think everyone would be like, we basically collaborate on every track in Cobra Kai. It's not as easy as saying like, oh yeah, like he does that stuff, I do this stuff. Like they're all like really deep collaborations, but we both bring these really undistilled influences to the table, which makes it like one, really fun for us to just kind of go ham at all times, and two, I think has made for this score that honestly only like our combination and friendship could like write.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you very much for elaborating on that. And of course, I must say that your score for each season offers a fantastic mix of organic instruments, synthesizers, and also metal elements. And I really mean that. And I think it's a great achievement if you're able to not only find music or write music which is appropriate for a project, but it also makes for a great listening experience. And I really have to say, I just listened to season 3 again, the album, a couple of hours ago, and it's really, really good. And how did you find out which musical element, which style was most appropriate for a specific character?
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Appreciate
Thank
that. Was
you.
very nice, and appreciate we try really hard to like create a very unique sound for the show, and we're glad that you picked up on all that stuff and enjoyed it. But I think our very kind of initial thought process on the different types of sounds in this show were that we kind of separated it into like these buckets, like where one bucket is the Johnny music, where it's really rooted in that kind of like Johnny's character, like hair metal or like 80s rock elements. And then we've got Daniel, which is more rooted in the like more traditional orchestral elements. Obviously we pull from some Conti there too, and like the spiritual kind of Miyagi references there. And then we've got the kids, the whole new generation, which Leo and I had decided that we wanted to work kind of that 80s synthwave revival, kind of retro electro revival sound. And I think over the course, it took us half a season to really start to like gel into that. And I think by the time we hit the second season, we're at like cruising altitude. And I think we had just found certain combinations and energies led to successful cue writing. And I think particularly like there's a track called Mall Fight in season 2,
yes,
where that is kind of a very good distillation of kind of like, okay, here's what we want to do with an orchestra, and here's what we want to do with like a hard rock, like metal influenced rhythm section and electronics, and put them all together. And it really comes from our how would you say it, like us being fans of like that type of vibe, like of that energy, like us growing up on like things like Power Rangers, or growing up on, you know, like Jackie Chan action movies that kind of like that didn't take it that didn't take itself so seriously, but was very sincere. And that is kind of like where we approach this, and I think that's kind of how it works, how it helps to work.
Great, thank you. And you had to underscore moments of passion, loneliness, and also drama, and especially toward the end of the second season when Miguel, you know, ends up being paralyzed due to the showdown in high school. And of course, in season 3, there is another big showdown which takes place at Daniel LaRusso's house, which doesn't turn
lots of showdowns in this show.
Yeah,
it's plenty of showdowns.
Lots of stuff going on, which actually offered you cinematic moments of cinematic scoring, and also an operatic finale, if you will.
Yeah, what's really awesome about the show, and I think one thing about the score that people don't realize when they just start tuning in, but you definitely realize, even casual watchers, by the end of season 3, is kind of how like highly thematic the score is. And it really makes it possible for us to weave through all of the different styles of music that we are sort of leaning into at one moment or another, or then combining, because it keeps it all feeling like it's part of the same score. And then when you have these, you know, ridiculously dramatic moments. And I mean ridiculous not in a funny sense, but in like a emphasized sense. End of season 2, all of season 3, end of season 3, like what ties it all together for us and allows us to explore those like passion and tragic moments is really the fact that like we've set up all of these themes. We got like a dozen and a half at least, if we started going through them, that we've been setting up since episode 1 all the way through the first season, all the way through the second season, new ones in the third season. And as we are sort of like, we're constantly working with them and making them relate to each other and doing them in different styles, and like using one that maybe started out on orchestra and suddenly doing it in guitars if thematically it makes sense to. And we let the storytelling of each season kind of lead us where to go. And because we have all these themes, we can just constantly, compose the needs of the story.
Great. And I must say the series features quite a few interesting characters. Of course, we have Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence, and John Kreese also returns at some point, I think at the end of season 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like the cliffhanger.
Right. And yeah, of course, he also has a troubled past, which is also depicted in season 3 with his Vietnam past. And we have the kids. There is Sam, Daniel LaRusso's daughter, Miguel, Robbie, Hawk. And I think the show depicts how much of a master manipulator, let's say, for instance, John Kreese is, and how some of the kids go through a phase of change. For instance, Hawk, whose name is Eli, he was a kid everybody picked on, basically, and it was, tremendous to see him change into a kind of rather ruthless person who then at the end of season 3 has another change of heart again.
What I like about this show is that, and Leo and I talk about this a lot, is that there's a lot, and we're also like, we should also say, like, we're very big fans of the show. Like, as we like to watch these episodes, and like, we don't read the scripts before we like to like go into the spotting session, watch cold, because we don't want to know anything. We just like want to, and we'll be watching and like we'll scream when we need to scream or whatever. Like, so we're big fans of the show in general. And what I love about the show is that there's all these like micro Karate Kid stories happening in the show, like the story of the Karate Kid, of like a kid who's bullied, who rises above adversity with like the help of a mentor. Like, how many characters are like that in Cobra Kai? Like, and you've got like tons of, you've got Miguel and Johnny, who is almost like the most like distinct parallel, but like, yes, you have Eli becoming Hawk and kind of like overcoming that. And then I think one of the ones that Leo and I connect with the most and talk about often is kind of Robbie's big arc. Like, Robbie is the one who really is like the most lost in the show. And like, where does he fit in? And does he have the ultimate like redemption arc, the way that like Daniel LaRusso might have it, or even like a Johnny Lawrence might have it, the way that we view Johnny Lawrence in season 1. So like, that's also kind of the fun with scoring these characters too, is like, you'll hear a theme, you'll hear a theme like in a really triumphant way. The Cobra Kai theme you hear when Hawk comes in for the first time as Hawk, and it's really kick-ass moment. But by the end of the season 1 in the tournament, we're playing that same thing in a much more like kind of evil, menacing way, because Miguel has like turned and Hawk have turned. So we have to, as the arcs continue through the series, like we use the themes a lot to like follow those tones.
Great.
Yeah, one thing that John, Josh, and Hayden do super well is like make all the characters shades of gray, and like everybody's got a story and everybody's got a side of the story, and like you never lose track of that. So like in the course of a season, you can simultaneously be on a character's side and also like cheering against them, and with some serious whiplash, especially like in season 3. Kreese is a great example. Like in the finale, he's like on one hand being this evil master manipulator, and on the other you're like cheering for the young version of him in these Vietnam flashbacks.
Yes.
And like you start to understand that everybody's got a story and might be the hero of their own story. And so I don't know, you can't question a person's motives, as Joe Biden likes to say.
And I believe that this series offered you some great musical challenges and also opportunities. And I believe it must have been quite a fun process to explore all these characters, getting to know them, and also to underpin their emotions musically.
It's the most fun. We have the most fun scoring this show. Like
it's so fun.
It's so fun because, like, yeah, as we've said, like, the creators are just amazing storytellers. And it's always just like a gift when you're able to work on a story as big as this. And it is also a very good representation of our voice. Like, we never feel like we're compromising kind of anything on this show, and we're always, Leo likes to say, we leave it on the mat. Everything we do, we do it like as hard as we can do it. And then on top of that, it's such a huge success. We're so thrilled with kind of post Netflix everything, because we've been working on the show since 2017. And it wasn't only until like August of 5 months ago when people started watching it. So, well, a lot of people watch it on YouTube.
There are a bunch of OG fans. I think one thing that also makes it really fun for us is like the fandom is really intense and they're really into the music, which is like so great, because then you feel like you're like in this constant conversation, so like this artistic conversation with like the fans. You're not just writing music for the show as like a faceless entity in the background. And so like we really enjoy like hearing from fans and like doing stuff that where we can interact with the fans. We've been trying to like do a little more just kind of like behind the scenes stuff, just to give like a look under the hood on some of our season 3 stuff, just because like people are really into it and like they seem to like it. Another thing that has been super fun for us is in between seasons 2 and 3, we did this like concert that we played at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, and then again at the Mosma Film Music Festival in Spain, where we took a bunch of our like, I don't know, main cues and got a bands together and sort of figure out how to arrange them for that band and how to perform them for that band. And in the process of doing that, actually like developed some of our ideas in a new way that we then brought to season 3. And like, it gave us this like material in this like exercise in the off season to like work with the material. But I think it's also just like, it was another opportunity to have fun with the score. And we're just always looking for that. Like, we always want it to be fun.
You have been given the opportunity to also create a legacy of your own, because I hope that this series will continue. And I think season 4 has been greenlit and is in development, as I understand. And I'm hoping that there will be at least 2 more seasons.
So do we.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting television, intriguing characters, and I was really hooked, as of I think episode 2, and I think I watched each season within 48 hours each, so that was
nice.
It is a really absorbing show. Like it is really hard to stop once you start watching it.
Yes, and that's what makes it so good, in my humble opinion. You want to know how the story progresses.
We actually watched the series. We rewatched when it went onto Netflix, and it was a blast for us to.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch
it. Yeah.
It's not unlike what I was saying about like the original Karate Kid in your friend's basement. Like, if it's on, you're gonna watch it.
If I'm not mistaken, Netflix bought the rights, I think end of last year. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it was. I don't know the exact timeline.
It was like June or July.
I think it was over the summer of last year.
Gentlemen, is there anything else you would like to add about Cobra Kai, about your career, about the Karate Kid? Anything else that comes to mind which I might not have covered?
One thing could be that we actually did the Cobra Kai video game. Is that what you were going to say, Leo?
Yeah.
No,
that's
you
not
forgot
what I was
about that
gonna
one.
say.
The video game, which we did last year, and it came out in October, and it's a total blast for anyone that likes kind of old school beat 'em up games from like the 90s. And our score, we did not use any material from the show. It's all new material, and it's all like inspired by the games that we grew up with, Leo and I in the 90s. And it was like a total like side project, Cobra Kai project that we had so much fun working on. And that album is also available streaming everywhere the show albums are.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a very fun game also. Like they as Zach and I would say, like they get it when they made the game. Like it is a very pure side scroller with like, fire and ice and ridiculous powers, and like you're beating up
and goons to beat up.
Yeah, tons of goons. Like it's really something special. And I think like everybody loved it also, like the game, which was pretty fun. I was just gonna say, I didn't have another thing to add, but like we're just really like we're really grateful because this score is so fun to write, and so it's really fun to creatively wrestle with it and create something that feels really original and like us. And we're so grateful that people are listening and really passionate about it and want to talk to us about it, because not everyone is so lucky to have something that is where people like really like the score. Like that's just, it's really cool. It feels really special to us and unique.
Great. What's actually next for you? What are you currently working on, if you are at liberty to discuss that?
Well, we got Cobra Kai season 4, but we don't know exactly when we'll be working on it, but we know it's coming.
It's coming up. Things are starting to shoot again in America and elsewhere, and it's nice that work is starting to come back for everyone. But yeah, we think Cobra Kai is very close on the horizon.
Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure talking to you. It was great, and I'm really glad you took the time out of your schedule to chat with me today. I really appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
Very much.
Definitely.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, Michael.